right now we have three set factions primarily, and we have some floating kind of like uh, just kind of additional bonuses, I would say, more so for just the main cast, because you have Ignea's squad as one side for the dragons, you have Faris' squad for black magic, and then you have Natsu and everybody kind of like adjacent to him from the main cast. You have Elisaria's group, you have Sabretooth, Diablos, and any other guild member that can kind of just come in. And I still think, like, and I'm going to talk about it in the video coming up when it comes to Elissaria, but I think that one of the reasons is that we have such a weird setup right now in terms of a lot of events happening at the same time is because if you look at it, and maybe I'll do a video on this as well by itself, is Mishima set up a lot of 100 Years Quest to be how he does arcs previously, where he has a lot of arcs that individually all have their own stuff going on, but then they all come together when it comes to a major arc that all of those previous points tie up. Look at Sirius Island, look at Tartaros, look at Alvarez. And you can look at, say, maybe right now with the True Dragon King festival, as Igni is going with it, is if now with the True Dragon King festival, that's going to be the big long going event in the story, or at least that's going to be like an overarching portion of the story with maybe its own mini arcs. I don't know. But as it were, I mean, I guess that's already how it's kind of is going, but as it were, there's a lot in the different small events that you got to look at, like, well, what is the point of this going on, or this going on, and this going on? And when it comes to Faris's side, I think the most interesting thing with her is the fact that she brought Zero back, because Zero, when it comes to her and, like, anything with black magic, I think it's gonna be really cool once we see her maybe studying Zareth's style and learning about like the Aetherius and going off of that, going and once she found Acnologia's arm, and anything along her path is still really interesting in her larger scope. I gotta edit the thumbnail a bit before I put this one up. This is gonna be just in it before the final product. I'll make her, I think her flowers are a different color, and I gotta make her eyes not just like the same color for her skin. But as it were, you gotta look at like each side. They have to have something important going on. Faris herself is a culmination of all the things on her side with black magic. Like I said, Acnologia's arm, being the Earthland version of Faris. Something, there's a backstory in black magic that's going to lead up to what we have with her, and probably more just expanding into the story because I really want to know about the abyss of black magic she's talking about, and there's a lot we can get from that. But with her side right now, Zero is, to me, in my opinion, the most interesting piece in the story from her corner, because with her other Aetherius, they're really cool. I just like that they exist as being from the book of Faris. But I really think that you can't forget that all of them are expendable except for Zero, and the only one out of the 5 that are natural Aetherius out of the Erasion sex is the one that I think has the most survivability, I would say, is Gate. Gate just seems to be the one that's going to be special. I don't know. I've got a feeling every single time he's in a panel and he's fighting, he just seems to stand there and either radiate just energy, or he just stands there with his hands behind his back. And it doesn't seem like he is even phased whatsoever. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. We'll see what's going on with them. But regardless, the Aetherius are expendable because they should easily be able to, you just make a new Aetherius, or theoretically you just remake the same Aetherius, unknown in terms of replication versus just making a new one, which one is easier. But when it comes to Zero is a special case because he is made from a corpse, and that is the same way that Natsu was. And I think that makes him technically a special character in in the structure of the world, because if he's the second type of demon that we know of like this, and he's made from something like an ancient type of magic like Nirvana, I would love to see a reveal around him that is either zero focused or opens up more for just Faris' side in general. Because I think my opinion is like, if Zero is expendable, then the reason is going to be because Faris has more of these characters that we've seen before that is turned into demons similar to Zero and back to life, like bringing back Zenkro, bringing back like Hades. I don't know. I would love to see, because I have a whole theory. I'm gonna do another video on of God Slayers and Black Magic. We'll talk about that soon. But with Faris, I think Faris, if she's gonna reveal something like that, it'd be really cool, because there are characters I think it'd be really fun just to see like brought back for like a gauntlet, and just Faris is able to, hey, these characters, yeah, they died. I was able to collect their corpses, turn them into powerful demons, and just throw them at opponents, and fight in a way that, with her own Aetherius books, but her own Aetherius corpses that she's gathered, that she could show what Zareth would be like without being shackled by his curse, but at her power set in her own right, and just let her do her thing. And with Zero, I think Zero is her big kind of plus into that, because when you look at her character, you have the fact that if she has her own like corpse made demon, like that is clearly like from somebody that was powerful but now way more powerful, because if he's just shattering Urza, and not just her base armor set that she came in to fight with, but just shattering the armor and the sword and throwing her back, and this is Zero in his base, because we don't know exactly if he's going to have a whole, the lines go off and he switches his brain or not, if that's going to happen, but he should still have an Aetherius side just for being an Aetherius now. So whether that's like some cool transformation, or he just gets like a cool transformed power-up version, or what's going to go on with that, I would love to see Zero. If he is not someone, again, replaceable to lead into more, he is going to have a larger role ongoing in, with stuff going with the Erasion sex, or with Faris' side in general. And this leads me into what I was going with. I know I've been rambling for a bit. It'll be in the title. It'll make it a little bit easier if you want to kind of skim and get to this point. But with the layout right now, we have the perfect setup for an old theory that I had a long time ago. And in this portion is that Faris, because bringing back Zero, this would be an idea. If you have, I've talked about it before, if you have Acnologia is in symbolism for the verse as the apocalypse, and Zareth is the black wizard, and is he is tied to with death and whatnot, and we were given Athena as the white wizard, so now you have the black and white, and now you have 2 out of the 4 colors for the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And if they're all done in different ways, instead of it being just like 4 wizards that are cursed by different gods, I think it would make sense for Zero to be a wizard who is brought back. And again, he's green themed, and maybe that can kind of like go into, there's something in his magic, and it's this, it's part of this color and style that it's like the green is like raw destruction or something, or like demolition magic, or I don't know, or maybe some type of erasure magic. There's some more specific style into it that goes into, because it would be in wording, he would be the like famine, and obviously that's not, his power doesn't turn stuff into just, oh yeah, I decay food, but it would be like in the idea of just like laying waste to things. And there's one thing to note, if you remember back to when Makarov used fairy law on Jose, and he like made all the color in his body go out. That was one of the things that it was never really explained, but when Zero was in the Midnight's Illusion, I think it's just safe to assume that everything that he saw happen from his perspective, he know like is something that would happen from his abilities. So like when he hit Natsu with Dark Rondo and multiple Dark Capricios at the same time, it like made all the color in his body break, like just completely turn white, and then he was like starting to shatter. And I would imagine at that point, this is like the idea in his brain of him getting the effect off of his magic. So I'm wondering if he could do something like that where his magic can just stagnate, and the idea of it's like it destroys the color in something, like stagnates it and breaks it apart, and just almost almost starves like the whatever it targets out of all just like energy across all boards, like life energy, magic, emotional energy. It's just something like very almost still. I don't know. It would really depend, because I would wonder like how far Zero would be able to climb, because he's so interesting for a character to come back. But I like the way that it was logical that he was able to come back in the story, because I'm always up for characters. It's like if somebody is set up to one day a character like this could return and we don't know what exactly fully happened with him, or there's something like this where you have this crazy black magic lady who goes around and decides to build her own army and shows up with Zero of all people. But if Zero is this character to her side, again, it sets up the idea of the split side pieces of each of these colored wizards, and I'm going to talk about that in each of these videos. But Faris with black magic, having, if she has again this idea of this green wizard within her party, it makes sense for each of them to now be split, because I'll talk about again my ideas for the other ones, because they'll be out around probably not too far off the same time, because I'll talk about, if you made it to the end of this video, is we're going to talk about Ignia and the red wizard and Elefseri and the white wizard, because obviously we know about the white wizard with Athena. But I think that's the one I'm gonna say for last, because that one's more of a, again, my tin. Everything with Elefseri ends up being a tinfoil hat essential conversation, because Elefseri is a very just suspicious character, and I think giving him Athena just again further made me suspicious of his character and what's going on with him. Whereas like I feel like with Faris, there's more of like a level of chaos, but in a direction that I can understand. Whereas Elefseri, again, it's like everything about him seems like he's telling you 60% of the truth, and he's not giving you the whole truth for some reason that might come back to otherwise make him look bad, or something that would reveal something on him. So we'll see exactly what's going on with that. But for now, I'm so stoked to see what exactly we're gonna be because I assume in the next chapter is really how I should open this. I'm super stoked in the next couple chapters. I'm guessing, especially in the next chapter, we're gonna see the Erasion sects and them winning their fights. Because one, if Gaia was able to beat, and I know I like to call him Hot Eye. I think Hot Eye is just a cooler name. But Richard, if he's able to beat him in his base without really doing anything, that's looking really, really bad for the Erasion Sace. Because I've mentioned Meredy is is probably one of the exceptions. I believe her, and then partially Cobra. I'd say a little bit Cobra. Is I imagine that the rest of them, after getting their pardons, have probably been living a pretty comfortable year, enjoying just being around and just being able to live their life without having to worry about the law. Like, I would imagine Cobra would probably train a little bit. He is a Dragon Slayer and he is a fiance, so he's probably would be thinking about, kind of like how Godjill's got his family coming up. That's the same thing Cobra would be probably thinking about. So I would assume that the rest of them probably wouldn't have gotten that much stronger from where they were during Alvarez, and every single one of the Erasion sect should be at least within like, oh, there's some geese flying by. Should be well into Spriggan level, especially if they're able to fight Urza in the current arc, with Urza having gone up against like Misaki and Wed and whatnot. So it just and again, Urza was in base when she was jumped by him, but it's still really telling to be able to do that, to pretty much just say nope to Urza's whole base form, because that's just Zero's opening punch. He wasn't even using any magic. So it essentially means that Urza has to just, like, she has no time to go into um to to stay in her base form and fight and then try and figure anything out. She has to immediately start swapping between armors and figuring out what she's gonna to do. So it just would, makes it more hectic from the start in any general match. Because when you think about it again, Urza usually, like, she'll get pushed into a point where she has to swap armors, but the fact that Zero was able to just say nope to it right at the start gives him such an aggressive presence to tell characters that you don't get to have that opening. Okay, my character and my opponent and I are going to test each other and see what each other can do, and I can figure out a little bit about their opponent. That's not how Zero fights. Zero is right into heavy attacks, and you are now going to have to think on your feet, or you're just going to get smashed by him. And it's not like, again, Urza couldn't potentially, like, again, I'm not going to say right now because we don't know entirely what Zero is capable of, but I would assume, let's just say Urza could beat him right now. It definitely wouldn't be a fight that she would be able to just calm her mind through. She would have to be on her feet the entire time and trying to be thinking of counters the entire time, and she figures out how to go about all his different abilities, especially if he's able to use two abilities at once. Because I imagine now too is he knows a lot of new spells. I think that we've just seen, like, we've been shown just what he's known, because it's easy just to see him spam stuff that we know that he's already shown. But at the same time, it'll be much easier to go into things now once we see him back in this fight if he just opens with another new spell. Because a bunch of the ones he used prior were illusions, so I imagine he can just keep casting them and screw over midnight. But I don't know. Zero again is, like, really interesting to me, because if he's gonna be Faris's trump card, because logically to me, he's already got a past, he's already got stuff about him, like, emotionally, like, that drives him, and kind of his own goals. So I think that he logically would grow faster than the other members of the Arasion sex, and because of that, and now he's a demon, so he doesn't have to worry really about getting old, and he would just get stronger and stronger at a faster rate than the others, and this would cause him eventually to grow into a new high class demon. I wish we had, like, a level, like, maybe we'll get something like that from the next couple arcs. We'll have, like, a classification of demon that is, like, their top class, and END's in that class, and maybe, like, Zero will enter that class once he, the lines go down, he switches, it'll be it's my most easy to figure out theory that's, like, all it has to, like, start up is just just have one indicator, and it's like, okay, cool, we're pretty much just immediately are gonna be, like, for sure gonna have the rest of it where he swaps with Brain once the lines go down, and then Ethereus form is they use their power at the same time, and they're like some weird two-headed monster demon in their Ethereus form. I don't know. I'm hoping for something like that, but I still just assume that he is going to have a higher level of value if he is not immediately cycled into another one. But I don't think I have to worry about that, because none of the Seis, I think, are going to be winning their fights. Because, again, if Hadai got beaten that easily, I just don't see any of the other fights turning around in their favor, because nobody in their fights was looking good. Nobody in their fights was looking very good in their match. And Cobra was the one that had, again, that I think had the best chances of winning a match, but then he was getting countered, and then he was getting further countered, because at the end of the chapter, he was not only can he not hear Blade's thoughts, but Blade can hear his thoughts, and he can't hear Blade's attacks. So it's just looking worse and worse for all of them. Maybe he's still like a dragon. Obviously, he's a dragon slayer. He could get some form of dragon form boost, or like some form of increase that just pushes him over the edge. You always have to keep in mind as a Dragon Slayer, there's always that possibility for some unforeseen boost and triggered in the middle of their match, because we know he's the only one that had a chapter a little bit beforehand, and I think that that was something that could indicate that he was training his power before, but I just don't really see what he would be able to pull out that would be a big like lifesaver against Blade. It's more so of like I'm wondering of how the Erasion Stace members are going to get out of there, because there's always that like chance a character could die. I don't assume very often that like anybody in the protagonists are gonna die without there being like a big reason. But there's always that chance of like, okay, well we're gonna just kill off one of the Sace members just because by racer or something. I don't know. Like there's always that like slim chance just for the sake of doing it and just making this arc just start out a little bit heavier. And it's like one of them gets sacrificed for the sake of the others. You say the others like, yeah, well, Racer dies, and it's like, well, that sucks. Well, we can kind of get everyone else out. Poor Sawyer. Literally, he's had like 0 extra chapters, 0 side content of any real kind. He just has maybe like a panel in a joke bit or something. There's nothing really for him, but something has to save the Sace members up and coming, because I think that the Erasion Sex are just going to steamroll over them in the next chapter or two, and they're going to just win their fights. And the Fairy Tail members are all preoccupied with the Fire and Flames members, so who otherwise is going to fight them, or are they just going to leave? Because this might also open up a theory that I had a long time ago about Alderaan and the previous Faris getting control of him that I would love to do, and I'm excited to talk about that relatively soon. We'll probably talk about that this weekend. But as it were, I have high hopes for Zero. There's like, in the idea if his character is somehow defeated and he's like just, oh yeah, he's done, I just hope that it's very quickly shown that there's a reason that he was brought in, and it's to show that, oh yeah, well, she can just turn dead people that were using black magic to at least X amount and turn them into demons and bring them back even if they were dead. Because then we could have stuff like Hades, and we know Hades was stated to be turned in like the closest you could be to a demon while being a human as possible. And he is like the one that was like the highest quality for being a demon essentially. So if you took his corpse, turned him into a demon, it would make sense as to like for Faris to have like go, to be like, okay, well, Zero is a big deal in terms of like potential demons in this, demon corpses to bring back, but Hades would be just more so, because on top of that, Hades, without having to worry about age or any form of old age aspects at all, would be dangerous. It'd be really scary for him to have such a high level boost on top of taking away the old age restrictions. But as it were, Zero is here right now, and until Zero's out of the way, I am hyped on Zero's just general display. And we'll see what he's going to do and what he's going to just bring to the table in the next chapter. I think he's going to destroy Midnight, and we're going to see something really just flashy for them. Because I think it's going to be an Erasion Sex chapter in full, and it's going to be a big just Faris's characters winning and then leading into Faris versus Bestia, because that's the real big fight right now. Because we've got like this all the mixed fights with the main cast and Fire and Flame, but the Sex, I just don't really see them losing against any of the Sace members. Faris versus Bestia, I really want to see that fight. I think that fight, I'll be really sad if that's off paneled. I don't need to see it to be like, oh yeah, 10 chapters. Like, it could be like 2 to 2.5 chapters and I'd be perfectly happy. Or like we could get like 2 chapters and it's one of those ones where it like ends and then like off panel Faris kills Bestia or something. And it's one of those bits. But I don't know. I would love to see some form of setup to where we have a we get to one of those matches while these other matches are going on, the smaller ones, and we see then what happened with Dogram, or not Dogromag, what Ignia found. Is it Dogromag? Does it have to do with Acnologia? His arm that Faris took out? Because like, I'm still wondering, maybe once all of these, like this plan went off, because it resurrected dragons like Alderaan and Viernans and stuff, what would it do to Acnologia's arm if that was within the continent when this plan went off? Who knows? That'd be something I don't think either side would really have in mind when getting set up for this idea of resurrecting all the dragons to actually resurrect Acnologia for the severed arm that Faris is holding on to. We'll see. Other than that, talk to you guys later. Tell me what your thoughts are really fast. Well, actually, real fast. Tell me your thoughts are real fast about Zero. Do you think Zero is going to have something bigger? Do you like this idea of him becoming like this idea of this green wizard? And we get, again, a little bit more defining of the magic. 'Cause have you noticed lately we've had a little bit more just dialogue on characters giving magic traits? Like Vierna's talked about, with Gray. I was like, oh yeah, is ice magic and dark magic. And then with Faris, the best issue is talking about like, oh, this you're using teleportation magic and spatial magic as well as dark magic. And there's just specific giving information on attributes and traits to magics that we don't normally have characters just talk about in the middle of their fights unless they're using a specific element, and it's usually just, oh yeah, my one thing. Characters talking about it and giving detailed explanation, we usually don't have that. So I'm hoping we keep doing that, and we see that a little bit more with, again, like, say, maybe, like, Zero or what's going on with any of the other members as they reveal what they're, a little bit more about their black magic, but also some of the guys that haven't said their black magic names and exactly what they do. So we'll see something like that. Zero especially. I think, honestly, if any of them are set up to potentially die, I think it would have to be Midnight, because Midnight is the only one that has pre-existing animosity with his enemy, and on top of that, Zero would want to destroy him. Whereas, like, you could say that the other sex members defeat their opponents but don't necessarily kill them. Maybe you have them defeated and they're turned into black magic versions of each other, and that's what they're gonna do, and they're just gonna have these evil, corrupted versions of everybody that they defeat with on their side, and you could say something like that. I don't know, because it's the idea of them not dying. Like, that is the most surprising fate for any of them, is if one of them dies. If it's just like they're defeated and then turned evil for like a while, I think that's like the most logical way I feel like that would outcome that we could have. But maybe we can get something like that. I think it'd be really cool if Zero could do like induce a level effect on that. Like, he could just apply black magic to somebody and then it's like, okay, now you're evil. And it's like the idea of how Faris beforehand, the previous Faris was, whiting out people and then taking control of them, but Faris is doing that now with black magic, kind of like how they're just turning random people into these shadowy face black magic like pretty much frantic monsters, but do it more so in a way that is, it's like, oh, if you get defeated by them, you get taken over, and because of that, you become like, I think it'd be cool just to see characters flipped in an evil version, but we'll see. It's just gonna depend on how it's laid out. But Zero is the only one I see just destroying his opponent, and we know he likes to do that. So I don't know. Other than that, comment below. We'll talk about the other two, and we'll talk about what's going on with Ignia and what's going on with Elisaria. But Zero right now, he's the big one, and he's the one that I think is the most odd and the most interesting. Bestia, I think, has a lot of character stuff and just general lore that is going to be really cool for her. But she is a character that I think makes a lot of sense. Like, Mishima likes to have that, like, you have the structure of the characters, and then bam, the character who's actually the, like, ranked directly below the main boss, shows up. You look at, like, Blue Note, and you look at actually Zero being the boss. You look at just the real fights when it comes to a lot of the verse. But I mean, and you look at what is it, like Future Rogue, and you look at Genma and stuff like that. It's just a continuous thing that I think it makes sense. But you say you say that like if Zero is going to bring in for the other guys, I just don't think it's gonna happen now with like the Ace being completely like getting decimated, but we'll see. With Ignia, I just see it being more so like it's gonna play more into Ignia's character, whereas Zero could just go into so many different directions, and I think that's fun about him. But other than that, I'll talk to you guys in the next one.